Ladies and gentlemen, we will now commence with the first working session for the day. I request the moderator for the session, Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, Director Research and Analysis IPRI, to please take his seat on the stage. I would now request the speakers for the session, Lieutenant General Retired Nasir Khan Janjua, former National Security Advisor, Dr. Khalid Chauhan, Member PVE NACTA, Dr. Anil Salman, OGDCL IPRI Chair Economic Security, and Dr. Syed Kaleem Imam, former IG PSP, to please take their seats on the stage. Our moderator for the session, Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, has served in various command and instructional assignments, including Pakistan Military Academy and Command and Staff College. He holds a civil engineering degree from Military College of Engineering and is a graduate from Command and Staff College, Quetta, and National Defense University, Islamabad. He holds a PhD from NUST and Masters from Royal Military College, Kingston, Canada. I now hand over the floor to the moderator for the session's proceedings.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Chairman IPRI Board of Governors, Ambassador Inam, President IPRI, distinguished panelists, and worthy audience, a very warm welcome on first session of this seminar titled Pakistan, a Bulwark to Terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan has been a veritable bulwark to terrorism, and why we say it, because it is the only country which has not only showcased a winnable model of terrorism, but it has taken so much casualties, and both in terms of human cost and material cost, that this has become a model worth emulating for the rest of the world, that you pay your cost in blood and material and yet triumph. It is the triumph of human will over adversity. And it's a classic paradigm of winning the counter-terrorism battle. We know that internal demography, geography, and an interplay of global politics and the regional upheavals, those have combined in a very fortuitous concatenation of events in the past to result in a kind of a perpetual cycle of violence and terrorism on our western frontiers and abatement from our eastern frontiers. Some time back, Pakistan issued some clarifications and a dossier of abetting terrorism on part of our eastern neighbor. 21 camps on the eastern and 61 camps on the western frontier were identified. So in the presence of such forces which are arrayed against Pakistan, and also because of our own internal angularities, Pakistan has been in the crossfire of terrorism. But it's a fascinating roller coaster journey, starting especially after '79. Pakistan suffered a slew of terrorist incidents, and then we, through our multi-dimensional approach, using kinetic as well as non-kinetic means, ensured that the model that we used for fighting terrorism echoed what one of the scholars said long ago, that the best counterterrorism weapons do not shoot. So why? The question arises, why should Pakistan be emulated as a model? What does the world owe as a debt of gratitude to Pakistan? The first thing is that Pakistan has remained on the right side of international law while fighting this scourge of terrorism and ensuring that despite the human cost and the material cost, it has abided by all the UN resolutions and conventions, the 12 UN terrorism conventions, and later on the whole corpus, legal corpus that was pre-9/11 in the shape of 1373, 1333, and 1333, followed by post 9/11 resolutions like 1373, 1377. Interestingly, one of the resolutions, 1377, amongst other things, asked all the regional countries to resolve their disputes. So most of the terrorism that emanates by way of proxy warfare is a consequence of your unresolved regional disputes. If one conflict actor keeps on abetting continually and doesn't come on the negotiating table to resolve those intractable disputes, then the conflict and its various enablers would continue like a perpetual motion machine. Now this is what we showcase by way of our operations. It's all very well known, and I'm just trying before this main discussion to give you a tour de horizon, recap and focus all of us on what the discussion is coming. Yeah, it's not working. Next slide, please. Okay. So Zarbiaz, so this was one of the important counter-terrorism operations in which when it ended, 3,500 terrorists, they were eliminated. There was a territory over 4,000 square kilometers that was liberated and sanitized. 7,500 bomb factories, those were eliminated. 250 tons explosives were found. The important thing is that that came at a very high cost. And then if we go to the theoretical construct of terrorism, the terrorist act is political in objectives, violent, designed to have far-reaching psychological repercussions, conducted by an organization with an identifiable chain of command, perpetrated by a subnational non-state actor. But the best definition that I always like is by an Italian ideologue, extremist ideologue, Karl Piscine, that terrorism is propaganda by deed. If the deed is not accepted by the people, if it is not propagated, if it doesn't get media traction, the terrorists do not succeed. Mostly they perpetrate acts of terror not to kill, but to showcase and but to proliferate their act, the grisly nature of that. So approaches, you see, most of our practitioners who are sitting here, when we treat terrorism like a crime, nobody better than Dr. Kaleem, he will enlighten us on that. And there are scholars like Yacubian and Steyers who tell us that like all pathologies, like all diseases, you cannot cure. The medical science in the West, it is so advanced, it has not been able to cure all the diseases. Certain diseases have to be managed and kept under a low probability index. So probably terrorism also like that. You starve it of the oxygen of the enablers, and then the nature of the terrorism is altered, and yet it's kept under manageable limits. Treated like a war, nobody better than our former NSA, General Janjua, will speak on that. Then treating it like a disease, Khalid Chauhan and Dr. Anil, I'm sure they would carry out exhaustive analysis of these factors, because when you treat a pathology like a disease, you have to go for the prophylaxis, you have to go for the diagnosis, and then you have to go for the curative remedy. So these are three main elements, and if you do it right the first time, prophylaxis, that is the best part, prevention. Then the diagnosis. If you don't diagnose the causes right, we have a problem. The curative remedy is both multidimensional due to the transnational and multidimensional nature of terrorism. So it does not lend itself to a single kinetic approach. Now, a bit about what are the enablers: international and regional empathy and cooperation. One of the scholars, Mary Calder, expatiated on this notion of empathy and support for the terrorism. And she said that in the global community, there is periphery and there is the center. Because of the forces of technology, technological changes, economical changes, social changes, she coined a term, revolution in social affairs. We all know, we are very well familiar of revolution in military affairs. So Mary Calder came up with the notion of revolution in social affairs, the crux of which is that the gaps between haves and have-nots, periphery and center, it is, expanding so much that those who are in the periphery, they feel shortchanged, they feel deprived, and they start nursing grievances. And these spurts of terrorism are a consequence of their disgruntlement and discord. Denial of public support. So public support is an oxygen. We need to win hearts and minds of people. We cannot leave our people at the mercy of those who can come and coerce. We have the current examples in Fatah in front of us. And that's an element, there's no gainsaying the fact, most important. Denial of sanctuaries. You see, all terrorist entities thrive on external support and sanctuaries. If there is a hatchery on your western border inside a country which continually provides support, if there is a continual support network on another border, then, like I said, that you may not be able to eliminate this malady, but you can certainly keep it within the tolerance threshold and a low probability. So the point to highlight is that since this is a transnational regional phenomena, you need cooperation of countries, and international community must pressurize those countries, those who consider covert warfare as another way of prosecuting wars. Next slide. Important thing to notice, ladies and gentlemen, this is a collective societal response. We used to use a hackney term, whole of the government, but I think this is the new reality, whole of the society. You got to infuse the spirit of fighting terrorism inside the society, make society relevant, make them economically solvent, make them satisfied, tell them that you are not at the mercy of those bullies who can come, take away your material and browbeat you. And then there's the role of your institutions, armed forces. Police has a very important role. And the classic example is that of Irish Republican Army. For 120 years, this conflict of IRA festered, but at the end, after 1976, the British thought that they have fought enough kinetics. Now let's take the army back, keep it in reserve, give more powers to police. And famous Diplock quotes. Diplock was a judge on his name. Those courts were introduced trial by jury without the normal procedures, and that was a quick way. Police was granted more powers, and the result was that when IRA terrorists started hanging, their aura and their mystique was defeated, and they were treated as common criminals, and the back of the insurgency was broken. The IRA itself came on negotiating table, and the Good Friday was the result. Last, I'll just read out, this was what our Chief of Army Staff said during last Magla dialogue, that terrorism is a major challenge to the world peace. Violent non-state actors and state-sponsored terrorism are a threat to traditional governance and state sovereignty. Terrorism can be defeated through corrective peace efforts on regional and global fronts. All countries need to step up efforts towards regional peace and economic connectivity. Right, with this short premise, I have set the stage for this discussion, and it is my proud privilege to now call upon our former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Nasser Janjua, who needs no introduction. He is a rare combination of a practitioner and an intellectual who's commanded a corps, who's commanded a division in the battle, who has seen this scourge of terrorism unfold from very close quarters. He's been part of those negotiations as an NSA to counter it at diplomatic level. So without much ado, sir, over to you for your discourse.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My very near and dear General Majid Ehsan, my brilliant and outstanding Chief of Staff, Southern Command, I have seen you excel in every affair. Ambassador Namul Haq Saab, Asif Durrani Saab, Air Marshal Amir, General Raza, Ma'am Umam Bakai, Ma'am Shabana, my Chinese friend, Shoaib Sadal Saab, distinguished guests, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and good morning. Thank you very much for getting me over to speak to such wonderful people. I have been asked to conduct an appraisal of war on terror. Terrorism, which has been a menace, a curse, which has entered our streets, homes, and which has made us to carry the coffins of our children. This continues to haunt us. Nobody is free of it. It can happen anytime, anywhere, and nobody is safe. Ladies and gentlemen, to conduct an appraisal of war on terror, I cannot do that while remaining in Pakistan. We have to zoom out and look at it globally, because war on terror has some serious pretexts and linkages, to me at least. Ladies and gentlemen, ever since the dawn of 21st century, the global north has held Global South by the throat. No country of Global South is free of war, confrontation, or competition. Fears loom large, shadow of war perpetuate insecurities and vulnerabilities. Diplomacy has turned out to be a deceit. What is said is not done, and what is done is not said. Ladies and gentlemen, in search of absolute security, Global North is strangulating Global South. And most of the Global South is struggling to retain their sovereignty, paddling through the Global North's made international governance structures, controlled currencies, resources, technologies, knowledge, and political economies. Let us come to the present day's development. Towards the end of last century, warring concept of Cold War came to an end, bringing the concept of unipolarity. Pakistan played a pivotal role as a frontline state. However, at the end of the century, brought about some glaring and daunting challenges, which were the first challenge, that the future century will belong to Asia. That means the old and traditional enemy, Russia, will resurge and China will rise. The second challenge pointed out that the Muslim world will become more prosperous and stronger. Clash of civilization was talked about and written about. Concept of Cold War had ended. New century, the new challenges needed newer approaches, newer politico-military strategies. The old enemy, Russia, could be prevented to resurge by strengthening NATO, denial of Atlantic and Indian Oceans, coupled with the control of prices of oil and gas in the world. China, a new enemy, needed a new concept. Hence, containment of China came to the fore. But that made the adversary too obvious. Hence, pivot to Asia was evolved. And when that was criticized, why are you pivoting towards Asia? It was called rebalancing Asia. When it was said, who are you to rebalance Asia? It was called as Asia Pacific. And subsequently, when India was made a strategic partner and a net security provider, it was called Indo-Pacific. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how Global North got hold of global commons Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans and put them to military use by establishing and weaponizing hundreds of military bases. This was to prevent resurgence of Russia and to contain China. To redress its insecurities, looking for a buffer zone, Russia got embroiled in Ukraine and is being prevented to research. While China, sensing choked at the oceans, avoided to confront and embraced the defensive politico-economic concept and resorted to Bridge and Road Initiative, linking the region from within and creating a win-win situation. India sought glory at the cost of China and the region and joined global north by betraying the region. All the roads started to go to India. Today, India's progression comes at the cost of China. India thrives on the fears of global north. Now, with this overglance, we come to war on terror and the second challenge. To tackle the Muslim world, war on terror turned out to be a strategy suitable pretext to replace Cold War. It commenced from Afghanistan, the most suited place to prevent Russia towards Indian Ocean, checkmate China, Pakistan, and Iran. Pakistan, for the moral reasons, stood with the world and once again became a frontline state and provided everything necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, soon weapons of mass destruction were seen in Iraq. Iraq was invaded, Saddam was defeated, caught, humiliated, and hanged. Against the prevailing system of rule, Shiites were brought to power. Iraqi army was banned, which made IS good enough to continue the future turmoil. Ladies and gentlemen, this war was then reshaped into Arab Spring. Pro-democracy, anti-government protests, uprising, arming rebellion groups all across the Muslim world. Nobody was free of it. Arab Spring touched anyone and everyone. US, EU, and NATO bombed at will. Arab Spring jolted the Arab world, making them to be appliant states. Recent Israel war in Gaza and Iran is only a continuity of the same. Israel was made to debauch after the Arab world was made toothless in a deliberate sequence. And in the same stride, riding the tide, intoxicated with the support of global North, India also tried to subdue Pakistan, but only got back a kick in our face. This was brief overglance of global power politics and war on terror. Ladies and gentlemen, how do I discern my own appraisal of war on terror? My first question is, what was war on terror? Was it a facade which served the global power politics of the global North? Was it real? Or was it half real? Was it another pretext of Cold War? How come that such a war remained limited to Muslim world only? Why the Muslim world is in perpetual turmoil? 38 million people displaced and 4.5 million died. Why was terrorism associated with Muslims who were first called fundamentalist, then extremist, and nowadays a radical Islam? Where from this Islamophobia has come? In my appraisal, whatever the answer may be, ladies and gentlemen, war on terror has globally fractured the humanity. It has divided and polarized the societies. Human values have been put hostage to ethnic and religious identities. We have become distant from each other due to religion-based hatred. Ladies and gentlemen, what could be more harmful for humans than this religious jaundice? And God knows for how long this will haunt humanity. I'm sure Global South will retain in its memory, global reset. War on terror has been a dreadful journey in which the Muslim world was put into. It has been a devastating pretext of the Cold War. Anyone and everyone who participated or became the part of war on terror crumbled. Even the US and NATO could not sustain it. But as of today, Pakistan stands tall against war on terror, but all alone, on behalf of the world. Those who initiated the war are long gone and busy elsewhere. But Pakistan still continues to take the brunt for something which it never did. Those who used Pakistan and yet failed themselves for their own inadequacies see Pakistan through the prism of their failure and dub Pakistan as playing a double game. Don't they realize now that they maligned us for supporting Afghan Taliban, under whose patronage TTP continues to injure Pakistan blatantly? Has the understanding ended? You couldn't be so unkind not to realize the reality. I cannot say more on how have we been dealt with despite our sacrifices since 1970s till to date. We have been a pivotal state without whom nobody could win or sustain. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would say Pakistan has unshakable resilience. We have transformed hardship into our endurance. We have been laying our brave sons, daughters, and children to graves. We have been mourning, but refusing to bow. We have chosen dignity over our survival. Even in trauma, we have never refused to fight back. We may be distrusted, but we have faced it with a quiet courage and perseverance. We know we have no other option but to win, and win we will, inshallah. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. A very enlightening discourse and highlighting the double standards and perfidy of the global north. I'm sure our audience knows that it's quite evident in the shape of lack of a universal definition of terrorism. There's been no consensus about the definition on terrorism, and because of that, terrorism does not attract the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction. There are difficulties because of this lack of definitional aspect. And in a lighter part, I'm reminded of Winston Churchill, who said to his Treasury Secretary in June 1940 that the resistance needs to be done, and there was a very famous phrase, set Europe ablaze, which meant that start terrorist activities, stay behind, and every kind of activity in Europe. And Special Operations Executive, that came into being on June 1940, which is the precursor of the modern SAS and the British Special Ops. So with this we come to our next speaker, Dr. Khalid Chauhan, who's presently serving as member PVE, NECTA. He's a senior police officer and a security expert, a UN veteran of 30 years service, and he holds a PhD in Gender and Development Studies from Australia, an MSc in Crime Deviance Control from London School of Economics. Over to you, sir, for your discourse.
Well, thank you very much. Chairman BOG, President Appraisal. I can see in the audience Dr. Shoaib Sadal, my mentor, National Coordinator NECTA, Ambassador Durrani, very distinguished panel. Ladies and gentlemen, very warm good afternoon to all of you. I've been asked to talk about National Action Plan and counterterrorism efforts of Pakistan in 10 minutes. So it will be a race against time. I'll try to complete it within the time. There'll be, first there's a disclaimer that whatever I intend to say primarily is my own reasoning and may not necessarily reflect the overall policy of NECTA. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be three takeaways from my 10 minutes talk. First is that the National Action Plan is very, very important, but more than a plan, it is actually a national agenda, a list of things which need to be done by the state. Second is that because of its huge vastness and a huge agenda, there are implementation snags and warranting institutional reforms, which we badly need. And the third is, in order to have short-term impact, quick impact, we need to focus on things so as to be more strategic and more, in a way that we are able to get the results quite quick. And I'll come to that on that. For a long term, we need to focus on social transformation approach, and we have all the ingredients ready for that. So ladies and gentlemen, just in the beginning, I'm sure that of all the discussion which have just preceded, you know that no other country have this much of accumulated experience which Pakistan has over the last 4 decades. be it the war in, the USSR invasion of Afghanistan, the US invasion of Afghanistan, the quick and hasty withdrawal of the US from Afghanistan in August 2021. So that puts Pakistan in a unique position wherein the people who have been dealing with this, they have got the skills, knowledge, and expertise to deal with it. And through the counter-terrorism dialogues with the rest of the countries and important international partners, the information is shared in the spirit of making this world a peaceful place. Pakistan, for the most part of the last 4 decades, has been in the eye of the storm. But unfortunately, there have been forces who have been eager to malign Pakistan, and hostile countries, they launched campaigns just as to discredit Pakistan, but through the resilience of its people, its armed forces and the law enforcement agencies, once again the world has seen that Pakistan stands firm in its commitment to fight terrorism and extremism. So when the rest of the world leaving behind the mess, what do? We have only one option: to put our house in order, to do things so that the house becomes in order. How is National Action Plan important? I said that it's very, very important. It is because I would refer you to the APS attack of 16th of December 2024. Before that, since the US invasion of Afghanistan, Pakistan has been dealing with the issues of the Taliban and the TTP, or the Fitnatul Khawarij, and is still doing so. But the APS attack was actually the watershed wherein the collective resolve of the Pakistani state and the community came together, and just in a span of 8 days, the parliament approved Pakistan's first ever National Action Plan. It contained 20 points. Since then, it has been revised in 2021, and now it has 14 important points. It reflects the will and the resolve and the determination of the state and the people. It addresses internal security. It reflects the national consensus, and it lists important public policy challenges which are very important for bringing in stability and having a forward-looking approach as a state. Some of the things which are actually highlighted by the National Action Plan include criminal justice reforms, huge agenda, Madaris regulation and reforms, enhancing capacity of the CTDs, chalking of terror financing, and refugees repatriation. 2 of the points will be taken up by Dr. Kaleem Imam and Dr. Anil, terrorist financing and illegal spectrum, so I'll not be touching upon those. But I would argue that the National Action Plan contains 2 very important points, the point number 1 and the point number 3. One is about that no militant outfits will be allowed to operate, and the third one is about sectarianism. So I argue that these 2 points basically are the pivot of the National Action Plan. Even though it's a list, it's an agenda, but still we can come up with a structure from within those 14 points. Why I say so? Because rest of the points, they are complementary. They feed into it, they support it, they strengthen it, and the overall problem of terrorism, which was defined in just in 8 days, that takes a short-term approach as well as a long-term approach. It was valid, this argument was valid in 2014, even before that, and even now. We know that since the withdrawal of the US, terrorism has seen a spike. The last year, somebody said that that was the deadliest year, with more than 500 attacks only in 2024. More than 1,000 fatalities occurred. And US also left 7 billion worth of arms and ammunition, which is now making inroads into Pakistan and elsewhere and causing instability. So because of all this, Pakistan is now ranked 2nd on the Global Terrorism Index, and that's massive. Of all the committees of nations, we stand 2nd in the Global Terrorism Index. And the first one, interestingly, is Burkina Faso, and Afghanistan is on the 9th. What are the implications? The implication is that by comparison, if you look at the Travel and Tourism Competitive Index, Pakistan stands at 101 out of 119 countries. No one would want and wish to come in an unstable environment. But there is a very strong nuisance in this. The global terrorism index, that is formulated in terms of the, the variable which it contains are the number of terrorism incidents, fatalities, injuries, damage to properties, hostages taken, and effectiveness of CT efforts. So if we just exclude the fatalities, injuries, and incidents of terror in Balochistan and KPK, the overall weightage will come down. So what does that mean? This means that, we need to focus on Balochistan and KPK if we want to bring Pakistan down on this global terrorism index. That is doable. The 98% of the terrorist deaths world over have occurred in conflict zones. And we know that after, since the World War II, 69 conflict zones still operate in the world. But the state has a resolve that it will not allow the terrorist outfits to use, the militant force. In fact, strong centralized states emerge through control of violence. So the states can't relegate the use of force to non-state actors. Is a sole prerogative of the state to use the force in meaningful ways. And there can't be any exceptions. Then the question is very briefly that, why is it that people use force? What are the reasons? I could find at least two theoretical reasons. One is the economic approach to human behavior, which says that individuals calculate cost and benefits before acting. So it's a rational behavior, which people do. They find benefits in taking up arms and then, resorting to violence. And second, I'm a huge fan of Professor Qasim Qassam. He says that, violent extremism can be used as a method. So if hostile country or elements, they're using violence as a method, the low-level operatives, ideologically driven, they may not even know that they're just a fodder in the whole exercise or the battle in that. But the use of force by the terrorists has also implications. And the implication is that the states failing to provide security become hotbeds of terrorism. The security is a predominant thing which the states need to focus just to stay relevant. So in the immediate term, the need to focus on Balochistan and KP, they're the hotbeds of terrorism. We know that the likes of TTP, Fitnatul Khawarij, or the Fitnatul Hind in Balochistan in the form of BMOs, they are very, very active. Interestingly, I'm not a scholar of geopolitics, but if you look at one important theory, which is called the routine activities theory, the people from police, they would know that three variables are needed for a crime or terrorism to happen. Number one is a motivated offender, number two is a vulnerable target, and number three is guardianship. Or the capacity or capability or lack thereof of the state to guardian, to safeguard, or to care the people of the state. So just imagine that, rest of, I said that I'll not be taking on 2 points of the National Action Plan. 2 I have already somewhat covered, but the 10 points, they relate directly or indirectly. When you think about the National Action Plan, which is huge, which is varied, which pulls in different directions, this is a conceptual lens which one can use, that if we are talking about the cyberspace or the use of the media, what does it mean in terms of this conceptual framework? So I would argue that the motivated offender would use the media, the cyberspace, to actually influence the individuals, and we have a huge number of youth. In fact, 64% of the population in Pakistan, present-day Pakistan, is less than 24 years of age. And then half of the population comprises of women. And interestingly, the TTP and other organizations, and even the sectarian organizations, they are, playing on the sensitivities and aspirations of this youth to, sort of suck them into this specter of terror. The cyberspace and the media is not new. If you look at a very interesting article, Cyber War is Coming, it is from 1993, and the authors claimed that whereas the World War I was about industrialization, the World War II was driven by mechanization, the 21st century they are more about the information and knowledge. We need to be, thinking about that. In Pakistan, people know, and some may not know, that the FIA is active on that. The Cybercrime Authority has recently been established. The PTA on a regular basis takes off those problematic hooks and websites. The Ministry of Information has come up with a special committee on narrative, which is headed by the federal minister. NACTA on its own came up with this Paigam-e-Pakistan and Pakistan National Narrative Against Extremism. But as the participant said, that we need to have this whole of state approach, whole of society approach. Only the top-down approach will not work. Everyone needs to chip in, and and it's a work in progress. Top-down approach does not work in the social transformation. Moving on, the CT cases, they need to be followed. This is one of the intentions of the National Action Plan. But in Balochistan, as well as in KP, the dependency is huge. And there are reasons for that. There's no time to delve into it. But we have got weak criminal justice system. Even the judges, they are at risk. The process of collection of evidence is not scientific. It centers on the whims and vagaries of the individuals. There is a journalistic model of criminal justice system and of the public sector in Pakistan. Most of the reforms, unfortunately, let me have this liberty to say that they have been relegated to people who would ordinarily resist any institutional inertia or change. So the change which is actually political, because any action is, that cannot be left to the babus, anyone who is involved and benefits from the status quo in terms of the power and privilege. That we need to have those social scientists who have academic insight as well as the practitioner's point of view, and there are many in Pakistan. Is a very fertile nation. Those need to be brought together. Why I'm saying this, that on a day in and day out basis, you would find people coming up and approaching to you, that asking that, please do something about this land dispute. Can you get me an FIR registered in the police station? We know there's a problem of crime working. Criminal justice system reforms are one essential part of this National Action Plan. But I'm afraid to say that, not much has been done. Things which were done in the past, and the likes of Shoaib Sadal Saab and other, and Kareem Imam Saab, they did a lot of work on that, but unfortunately that has not been channelized into implementable solution and strategies, only because it then tends to affect the institutional inertia and the power and privilege of the few individuals. Moving on, Madaris regulation, if we consider that we know that many of the suicide bombers were actually of Afghan origin, when their dead bodies were traced, we found out that, they are actually, so no country, there's no concept of a nation state with fluid borders, anybody coming in, walking in and going out. Pakistan, for the most part of 40 years, has, shouldered the responsibility of 3.7 plus million refugees in Pakistan. That's a unique thing. Merged districts, again, they need reforms, like the land reforms, structural reforms. An important point is that of Balochistan reconciliation process, because reconciliation means participation, involvement of the individuals. And again, if people are not, if the policies are not inclusive, if people are not included, and if the development does not create stakes of the individuals, one should not be by any stretch of imagination thinking that the peace would return to a place. So this is very important, and it's political. How can one imagine and think that in the meetings at the district level or a division level or a provincial level, which undertake such huge agenda, such very important business of the state can be actually thought through? It needs, in terms of the recommendation, I would say that the people who know the way that the state functions, and the people who know the way public sector actually and the communities function, they need to be brought together to task them on each of the very important points of the National Action Plan. Otherwise we'll just be moving in the circles. And on a happy note, I would say that the government of Pakistan in December 2024 has approved this National Prevention of Violent Extremism policy. This is a flagship policy which is about the social transformation approach. Brigadier Saab actually mentioned that he used the analogy of disease, but disease is actually the countering. Immunity is actually the prevention. So the people, the youth, the women, and the general society who are still thinking and maybe on the fence, and considering their options, whether because of all the frustration and other issues, and maybe their aspirations to join some organization or some gang, they may be informed and they may be made well aware so that they do not fall into the trap. Because of the paucity of time, I will just say that the National Prevention of Violent Extremism Policy is point number 8 of the National Action Plan. It has framed a 5R framework wherein the emphasis is on revisiting the learning content, reaching out through media to the public, reducing the risk through interaction with public, and reinforcing creativity and Pakistaniyat and cohesion and resilience, and reintegrating the perpetrators and the victims of terror and violent extremism. NACTA in the past 5 months has come up with a framework of domains. And we have identified, out of that policy, we have identified 5 implementable domains, which are culture, community engagement, communication and media, curriculum, the syllabus, and the duty of care. I'll just say that, why is curriculum important? Has there been any changes in that? The things which ought to be there, are they in the curriculum or not? I challenge you, all of you, to go and take a look, and you will find that it is kind of static. The word is focusing on the concepts of citizenship and the fundamental values. The state needs to focus on the values, but herein we are still struggling again with even though we are one of those states which has the functional state system. We need to move in the direction wherein the specialists are brought in, sort of marginalize the journalist, empower the specialists so that they take on this very important business of the state. Communication, the narratives, top-down, just making a narrative, populating it will not work. A TV play, a role model, that can become a narrative. And last thing is that the state has a duty of care. If I am somewhere and someone, resorts to hate speech against me, it is for the state to protect my honor and my dignity. To the extent we are able to do this, Pakistan will, become a peaceful. It is resilient, but it will become a peaceful and secure country for us all. I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalid. You mentioned an all-inclusive national action plan. And the criminal justice system, its modification was point number 20th in the previous iteration. And in the current iteration, I think it is, again, maybe 13, one of the points. And there's a need. And we have IRA example where judges were empowered and the prosecution was made easy. You see, there was a terrorism scholar, Alex Schmidt. He analyzed 100 case studies of terrorism and came up with a very interesting conclusion that there are 2 main causes. One is permissive, one is precipitant or structural. So permissive is either it is what kind of political system you have, what kind of geography, urban, rural you have, which leads to elements of terrorism. And the precipitant or the structural, so therein he came up with very interesting formulations that external support, your environment, regional environment, and the grievances, which is the warp and woof of terrorism. Do we address those? I think Pakistan has done a lot by way of a 3D approach, where the international community has come to accept it as the most suitable remedy. Diplomacy, deterrence, and development. A lot of development has been done in those areas. More needs to be done. Deterrence by way of kinetics is still going on. Diplomacy, of course, if you can have good relations with the neighbors, you remove those causes. Now we come to a very important part, terrorist financing. As I just mentioned earlier, post 9/11, there was a series of UN resolutions. 1373, most important, it established a CTC, Counter-Terrorism Committee. And FATF was more energized. Dr. Anil has done a lot on Financial Action Task Force, and I'm sure the whole audience would benefit by his insights. He's carried out a very interesting comparison in one of his studies on FATF, Pakistan's FATF role, and how Pakistan brought its laws, its regulations in conformity with FATF requirements, and that's how we came out of the grey list. How India, despite all those pamperings, is still suffering from informal economy and those loopholes which could be exploited. So Dr. Anil is presently serving as Economics Security Chair in Islamabad Policy Research Institute. He has a PhD from Rensselaer University and is a postdoc from Harvard, a multidisciplinary domain expert who's done a lot on blue economy, economics, tariff reforms, and he has a co-chair with the OGDCL in his present capacity. So over to you, sir, for your discourse.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, and fellow colleagues, allow me to begin by acknowledging the complexity of the subject at hand, not just in technical terms, but in broader grammar of geopolitics, institutional power, and financial justice. When we speak of terrorist financing and money laundering, we are not merely referring to the forensic or regulatory challenges. We are, in fact, engaging with the architecture of global financial morality, one in which Pakistan, for the better part of the last decade, has had to do both comply and contest. Can you move on to the next slide? And the next one. Thank you. Let's be clear, the FATF was not created in a vacuum. It emerged out of G7's anxiety in the late 1980s. Anxieties over narco trade, offshore secrecy, and the rise of what is now called the shadow economy. Post 9/11, the remit expanded. Terror financing and proliferation financing entered the lexicon. The premise was sound, but the politics that followed were not always so. The next one. Pakistan entered the FATF grey list in 2018. The charge? Strategic deficiencies in our money laundering and counter-terror financing regime. The next one. But beneath that technical phrasing lay a more complicated subtext, a pressure tactic, a reputational squeeze, and dare I say, a geo-financial chess move, orchestrated by actors with no small stake in Pakistan's regional isolation. Indeed, India's own leadership admitted it used FATF as a weapon of coercive diplomacy. And while just strategic maneuvering may yield headlines, it does little to enhance the credibility of multilateral institutions. Fortunately, Pakistan chose not to play victim. It responded with a seriousness and statecraft that deserves recognition. Our approach was not piecemeal, it was systematic. Pakistan embarked on a rigorous whole-of-government response. From the Ministry of Finance to the State Bank, from the Financial Monitoring Unit to our law enforcement agencies, we designed a multi-stakeholder compliance. We began as obligation transformed into opportunity. a chance to clean house, digitize, institutionalize, and build resilience into our financial ecosystem. We amend the Anti-Money Laundering Act. We passed laws on mutual legal assistance. We brought our DNFBPs, our real estate, jewelers, and legal professions within the ambit of AML regulation. Most critically, we operationalized the freezing and prosecution of entities and individuals designated under UN Security Council sanctions. Let's not forget the human capital behind these efforts. Dozens of inter-agency coordination meetings, capacity building workshops for prosecutors, and real-time data sharing protocols across departments. And yes, for the first time in our history, terror financing cases were taken to logical judicial conclusions. Pakistan's progress was not rhetorical, it was measurable. We fulfilled not just original 27-point action plan, but also subsequent 7-point follow-up. In doing so, we demonstrated a level of technical compliance that exceeded expectations for our country of our capacity, and in some metrics even outpaced several developed jurisdictions. This progress was validated through FATF's own on-site assessments in 2022. The final outcome? Pakistan was officially removed from the grey list in October 2022 that year. But for us, it was not the end of a checklist. It was a beginning of a mindset. Let me say this with humility and clarity. Our journey was not without its struggles. Internally, we confronted a fractured institutional ecosystem, overlapping jurisdictions, undersourced enforcement, and gaps in legal coherence. Externally, we battled a politicized global financial order where narrative often trumps nonce. Yet we persisted because we understood that money laundering and terror financing are not just compliance risks. They are developmental risks. Every illicit transaction is a subtraction from public trust, a distortion in resource allocation, and a threat to peace. Even as we celebrate progress, we must anticipate the new risks. Today, virtual assets, cryptocurrencies, decentralized finance, stable coins pose novel challenges for anti-money laundering regimes worldwide. Unlike many jurisdictions still struggling with a response, Pakistan has proactively begun regulating virtual asset service providers. Our Central Bank and Securities Exchange Commission of Pakistan are formulating frameworks that balance innovation with integrity. This is essential because tomorrow's terror financer may not carry a suitcase of cash. They may carry an algorithm. So what exactly did Pakistan get right? We internalized FATF compliance not as an external burden, but as an internal imperative. We moved from reactive compliance to proactive governance. We engaged FATF technically, but also diplomatically, advocating fairness, exposing double standards, and reminding the world that financial surveillance must not become financial subjugation. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Pakistan's FATF journey is not just about lists. It's about credibility, sovereignty, and reform. We stand today not as defendants, but as architects of a financial system more robust, more transparent, and more globally aligned than ever before. So, we urge the global community, let the FATF remain a technical forum, not a political tool. Let compliance be based on substance, not suspicion. And let Pakistan's example be seen not merely as a case study, but as a signal that nations can change course, can institutionalize reform, and can rise with dignity in global system that is too often unforgiving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anil. Very short, succinct summary of Pakistan's terrorist financing efforts. Now we come on to last but not the least important. In fact, we reserve our best for the last. Crime and terrorism. So this is something very important. The example of drug cartels and FARC in Colombia is an example as to how terrorism gets nourished by crime. We talk of illegal crime spectrum here. Pakistan has instituted border control, tightening of refugee laws, and a whole raft of laws and administrative measures to control the crime, because somehow if the crime is not controlled, the proceeds are always funneled and keeps a steady source of sustenance for the terrorism. Dr. Karim is a former IG police, and he's currently teaching in Quaid-e-Azam University. He has served with distinction over 3 decades, and he has served in United Nations. He's held the portfolio of IG National Highways and Motorway Police also, and holds a PhD and LLM from London. So over to you for your discourse.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. So, like the moderator said, last but not the least, so just lend me your ears for 9 minutes. Just stay away from your phones, watch me, give me your vibes so that I'm able to share some interesting thoughts. I know I'm the last panelist, so you must all be dozing or busy in some of the messages you have sent, and you must be getting a reply back. So कुछ चीज़ें हम ज़रूर बात कर लें और हम गौर करेंगे इस चीज़ में. We are talking about terrorism, we are talking about organized crime. Yes, Pakistan did excellent on this context, and they lost some very good men in this domain, in this fight, you know, so that the citizens of Pakistan may live in peace. In the context of police, we lost almost about 7,800 police officers, and this include officers from constable to the Inspector General, and it's also included the female police officers. So we have lost lot of good friends from the armed forces of Pakistan, and we feel very proud and we pray for them. So there has been a fight, and but let us also review ourselves. Let's also talk to ourselves that how did it started, what are the gaps, and what we have been doing, what we have achieved, and what is the way forward basically. So we have an NC over here, the National Coordinator, Mr. Jawad Dogar, our professional police officer. NECTA was formed in 2008. We are very serious about terrorism, but since 2008 to 2025, we have almost 17 NC. So this is how serious we are. So we have 17 NC in last, say about 17 years or 18 years, we have about 17 NC NECTA. We are talking about terrorism, and we say we are victims of terrorism, but we are so fond of registering cases in the context of ATS actions. I just made a survey, and from 1997 till now, we have registered almost 38,000 cases in the heads of ATA. Are we telling the world that we are having a lot of terrorism incident cases over here? The worst was also like about 400, 500, and maybe in 2013 it moved over 900, around 1,000. But why are we registering cases under these sections when we have Pakistan Penal Code and we have other punitive laws available, but somehow we love registering cases under ATA, and then we also say that we are victims of terrorism. And we have invented words like Vukla Gardi, Media Gardi, Police Gardi, so we try to associate all of this with it. They say this is one of the most peaceful times in the era of human history. And right now, almost about 40 conflicts are ongoing. Imagine a time when there were more conflicts. What would have been happening at that time? We also talked about the National Action Plan, which somebody told me was drafted in only 3 days. So much for our wisdom that we had such an incident and we drafted in just 3 days. And the most important significant point of the agenda was reforming the criminal justice system. And that was our last priority. That was almost the 20th point on the card. So when we talk about this spectrum of illegality, we keep asking ourselves, operating in these gray zones between war and peace, between ideology and crime, between state and non-state. And we keep on asking ourselves, what is this battle all about? Are we fighting? We lost so many good men, and citizens and all. Who are we fighting against? That's also a question. Who are we fighting against? So we have created several myths. And I'll just run through some of the myths to let you understand that how we actually understand this. Some of the myths of cross-border terrorism in Pakistan are all terrorism is imported. While foreign involvement exists, homegrown extremism, sectarian outfits, and internal socio-political failures also fuel terrorism. We must keep this in mind. They say borders are fully secured. Again, this is a myth. Porous terrain, tribal networks, local complicity allowed continued infiltration and illicit crossing. We also say that non-state actors are out of control. The reality is the line between state, non-state actor, hybrid actors is often blurred, raising question on strategic tolerance. Remember, there is no such thing as non-state actors in a larger context. All non-state actors are supported by some state, and they are proxies. We also have myths in the context of illegal spectrum. We say only the poor and tribal people are involved in illegal trade. The reality is these are often run by well-funded politicians, connected cartels involving state actors and businessmen. We also say that terrorist groups fund themselves solely through foreign donations. The reality is drug trafficking, illegal mining, kidnapping for ransom, hawala hundi systems are key financial arteries. So we continue to live in this myth. Another myth is that digital spectrum is fully regulated by PEMRA or PTA. The reality is that illegal satellites, feeds, encrypted communication apps, unauthorized radio frequencies are widespread in the border zones. They also say every arrest is a success. This is all myths. हमने बड़े से बड़े लोगों को मार दिया, पकड़ दिया. Reality is many such actions are symbolic or sacrificial, while core network remains untouched. Another myth is that geofencing and surveillance have eliminated illegal activities. The reality remains adaptable criminal networks, continuously evading technology by switching location, using human couriers, and operating through third parties. So these are some of the realities which is existing on the ground. Moving forward, I can also quote you examples in my early days of policing, where we got hold, had an information, we got hold of a truck, and we got hold of the drugs from the truck, but only to find a 15-year-old boy driving it. So for us, where was the state? Where were the state institutions? And this 13-year-old boy driving led the vehicle, So paid in wheat, no school, no electricity. A child caught in the war, he didn't start it. So law enforcement must arrive before the child becomes a mule, before the border becomes a battlefield. Are we approaching those areas? Are we accessible to that areas? I also see institutional gaps. For example, as an Inspector General, I saw that when we wanted to digitalize police records and cross-match suspects nationwide, the initiative failed. Not due to technology, but due to lack of cooperation between the provinces. It is so difficult to even get to make a crime data and data bank in Pakistan. Now we have been able to succeed in some way. We have also got a driving license repository now, but still we are far away from making that big leap, one would say. But I also talked to a friend of mine who lives in Parachinar, and he was telling me that we sleep in the sounds of gunfire. So we see that, and when I talked to him, he said, we need someone to say, this land is ours and we will protect you. So we see all these challenges which come across, you know. And moving forward, I would end by saying and suggesting, being a law enforcer, I believe the armed forces of Pakistan has done a wonderful job, but I always insist and assert that police is a first responder, and let police be trained, equipped, and make them professional to respond to this situation. We cannot, professionalism is a hallmark of good work, and we must ensure that we are following it. So if we move forward, we need to shift from reaction to preemption, build real-time intelligent fusion centers between agencies and organizations, use predictive policing models in the border areas. Number two, empower police as first responders. Let police take the lead in borderland city and anti-smuggling operations as well. Recruit locally in the border zones, which is so important. My third way forward would be institutional coordination. Reduce the gap between civil armed forces, intelligence agencies, and police. Set up a central counter illegal spectrum task force, and I believe that's very important. Smart legal enforcement. We should see that we don't apply ATA section in every crime, and every crime should not be treated as an act of terrorism. CNSA, PICA, Custom Act with precision and not with a blanket use. Fast track court, witness protection program, and digital forensics. These are all those means and tools to ensure that the culprits is penalized, is taken and accounted for. Fix the foundation. Invest in education, healthcare, economic inclusions in the border zones. Strengthen internal accountability in the policing. I would also like to suggest that the shortcuts that we introduce in extrajudicial measures, we have to ensure that if we want a long-lasting, gradual improvement in the law enforcement, we have to follow the due process. And like I always keep saying that the institutions, state has to be ethically transparent. They have to be ruthlessly ethical while enforcing the law. They have, do away with polarized policing. If you cannot do selective policing in any accounts, and if you do, you will see the results which are coming right in front of us. Lastly, I go back to the criminal justice system and just wind it up. There are around 120 prisons in Pakistan, and it has a capacity of about 55,000 prisoners. It can in-house 55,000 people, but more than 86,000 people are living in those prisons. So they are overcrowded by almost 66%. Imagine in this room if we are having 2,000 audience over here, and what would be the state of affairs over here? You have to start with the witness protection programs, provide protections to these pillars of state, you know. With 2,000 police stations all over Pakistan, I think we need to set up a system where we make these police stations more accountable, more effective, providing them the sources. And I believe that if you really want to be on the top of terrorism, police has to be on the forefront. Police, if you believe that they lack in certain domains and areas, improve their capacity. So it's like a football player. If he's not really performing, you need to bring more football players. But you cannot bring a hockey player to play a football. So you need to ensure that within a police system, you need to improve their performance. So these were some of my thoughts, and thank you, IPRI, and I see some of my mentors over here, and I'm so glad to address and just share some of my thoughts. But let me again say that in a recent war that we had, the Armed Forces of Pakistan professional calibrated response has earned us a great mileage, and in fact, we have not only won on the battlefield, but we have also got a great diplomatic victory all over the world, you know, and people are now questioning what next. But what next is like prepare for something new, you know, and be alert, not to be complacent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brigadier Sahab. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So thank you very much, Dr. Kaleem. See, you mentioned about enhancing the police capacity. Obviously, it's a given. And I'm reminded of a saying by one of the doyens of this low-intensity conflict writing, Colonel Caldwell. So he coined the term small wars. So this was one of his quotes, that when the armed forces are employed, the terrorist has already won. You understand? I mean, the armed forces are there to go for a quick operation, pull back and then hand it over to the police. Thankful for your discourse. So ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion, and we have 20 minutes for question and answer. May I request you to keep your questions short, not long statements and discourses, just the questions, so that we elicit the max from this very stellar cast of speakers that we have. So first question. Yes. Dr. Bakai.
Thank you so much. Very interesting session. I'm grateful the Brigadier gave the mic to the women first, also because I'm the only woman on the panel. But having said this, it is very illuminating. My question is to Dr. Aleem. You said how India has weaponized FATF against Pakistan, is on record saying that it has done so. What are we doing to prevent it? We have countered the Indian narrative clout for now, but India will get back to it. So what are we doing to continue to stay out of the grey list? India tries time and again to push us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Huma. There was a review of Indian FATF also last year, and at IPRI we have produced one of the very thorough book that actually shows that what are the misdoings of India, and still it was not placed in the grey list. Then we had roundtables in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad portraying that what were the efforts of Pakistan, and it was doing more than that it was being expected, and Pakistan got out of the list. You are very right that what are we doing right now? I think it's not more of a reactionary approach. Right now, the journey that we have come across from 2018 till 2022, Pakistan learned a great deal. And now we are, as I said, that WASP for the cryptocurrencies. Now this is a proactive measure what Pakistan is doing. So it is bringing more regulations, it is bringing more governance mechanisms so that countries do not have that kind of pressure to be placing Pakistan in grey list. So I think now we have more of a proactive approach, and the institutions, it's more of a whole approach that they have learned from that period, that what has to be done in future if countries like India start putting pressure that, okay, Pakistan needs to be placed in grey list.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to have your lunch served hot, then ask short questions. So, to another lady, Dr. Shabana.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor Shabana Fayaz from Terrorism University, very learned panel, I must say. I have a question regarding the NACTA and the PVE from Dr. Khalid Johan. I haven't heard much about the role of the women in the whole preventing violent extremism and the NACTA, you know, and the youth as well. Because we know we haven't touched much about, not much about the female militancy and the female suicide bombing. And how would you reflect on that? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Very good question. That the women are almost half of the population of Pakistan, so none of the policies actually can, afford to ignore that big variable. And obviously, then again, in the youth, they are also evenly split. I guess you would know that the National Prevention of Violent Extremism policy has been actually approved by the Cabinet on the 24th of December, 2024. So it's a new thing. We are at a rollout stage. Women, even within NACTA, they have been playing very important role with our outstanding officers actually taking on the roles of communication and outreach, conducting seminars, going to the universities. We have even signed an MOU with the Quaid-e-Azam universities and many other universities across Pakistan. I'm sure that you're witness to the signing of this MOU. So basically, it's a broad-based outreach approach which NACTA is following. And we are reflecting because, it's undergoing transition and we are in the process of reflection. But whereas, the consensus is that whereas kinetics are important and people who have got blood on their hands, they need to be taken on with the due course of law. At the same time, we need to focus on the prevention side of it, which is much broader and we cannot ignore it at the societal level. Pakistan is a country of 244 plus million people. It's a huge country, it's the 6th, 7th country in terms of the number of the people in the world. So, this moving forward, the social transformation approach, which the National Prevention of Violent Extremism policy promotes, that needs to be adopted, prioritized. As I said in the brief comments which I made, that we need to focus on curriculum, and there are two parts to it. For example, what are the things which should not be there and they are there, and then more than that, the kind of citizenship and the values which we need to promote, and many other countries like Commonwealth countries and countries in North America, they are doing that. We need to learn from those best practices. There's a work in progress we are undergoing or having a project on that as well, where the curriculum is being actually looked into. You know that there are flags, sort of red flags, when it comes to curriculum as well, so we have to be politically very sensitive to that. But, my own understanding is, and the NACTA officers in NACTA, they also share that there are things which ought to be in the curriculum as well. For example, do we have a citizenship module in Quaid-e-Azam University? Can we replicate it up to the kindergarten level? Whereas the word is focusing on diversity, multiculturalism, harmony and inclusiveness, are we only focused, how are we actually dealing with the questions of identity? Is subnationalism a problem, which is actually seen as a problem? But do we see that, even in the countries like US, there are multiple binary identities like, the Italian Americans, the British Pakistanis. So can we think of having those, Baloch Pakistanis and, Punjabi Pakistanis and Sindhi Pakistanis, wherein we are able to preserve the local identity as well as a regional and national identity in terms of the Pakistani. So again, communication, the narratives, we are exposed, our children are exposed. Now the things are changing because even, in the good old days there were boundaries, but now there are no more boundaries. Anyone can influence our articulate students and children from anywhere in the world. And people do it, they use these narratives and the gaming practices. So women, they are the harbinger of change and the social transformation. Moving forward, NACTA is actually prioritizing that. The government is prioritizing it. There are a few committees like the CT committee and the Harden the State Committee, but there's a socio-political and economic committee as well, which is housed in the Planning and Development Ministry. The thing is that Pakistan being such a big country, the top-down approach will not work. So if the assumption is that only one institution will take the lead and in a colonial mindset will sort of, dictate that do this or do this is not going to happen. We got to have the inclusive approach where our different segments and elements of the state, they come together to deliver. The issues of social service delivery and the governance are very important questions. As I said, there's the civil service reforms, public sector reforms, the police reforms. Can you imagine that even police, or as I said, even on a day in and day out basis, we get the questions, can you get an FIR registered? So you have to call a DPO or a police officer. All the crimes, as Dr. Kaleem Imam said, they are not registered. There's an issue of crime working. We need to set our house in order, and that means the reflection of our practices, and then calibrating our response, bringing in the specialist. The generalistic model is not going to deliver. The governance is important. We need to prioritize governance so as to deliver, and women are equal partners in this, equation of change.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Khalid. Tokir sir, please.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Kaleem Imam, a good old friend. Start with you. You said the issues. We all know the issues, but my question to you is, what are the hurdles? Why we are not able to implement and overcome those hurdles? Is that the political will or is something else? Question two, Dr. Chauhan, I have to ask one thing. As I've told you that I've been also involved in NECTA in 2.5 years for establishment of NECTA. The legislation was not passed for many years, and I hope right now it's passed. We have been cutting the terrorism leaves and branches, but we have not cut the roots. Why is that? We know the facilitators, they are sitting abroad. We are not able to catch them, we are not able to intercept them, and we are not able to bring them back to Pakistan. And third question to General Janjua, who've been working with a long time with him. The National Action Plan, 15 points of National Action Plan, but have we given the responsibility for each stakeholder what their responsibility is? For example, media responsibility, IS, PR responsibility, political responsibility, military responsibility. I think we have not done that. And that is the reason the National Action Plan is only implemented by only 20%. Thank you.
You'll go first, sir. Last question, jawab, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Tokir Saab. Yes, the question is that we make laws, we make rules, but we don't implement them. Are they not implementable, or is it so difficult? Why do we actually do reforms if we don't want to implement them? That's a question. I think as far as police is concerned, the first reform was done in 1948 when Mr. Jinnah announced that there should be a police commissionerate system in Karachi, but it never saw the day and the notification was never made. So that was a far-sightedness of a vision of a founder of the country who said that there should be a police commissionerate system in Karachi. After that, we almost have about 27, 28 police commissions, and everybody was saying that let's reform police. हम सब पुलिस को बुला भला कहते हैं, 7 दिन शिकायतें करते हैं, भाई अगर कोई चीज़ ख़राब है तो उसको ठीक कर लें, थाना कैसा है, थाने में मसले मसाइल क्या हैं, थाने को कैसा होना चाहिए, everybody knows. Do you want to do it? That's a question. But if you want to do it, then there's a cost, and then there a lot of things, will become a challenge. So why it is not implemented? Simply will, dedication, and diligence. No, there is no political will, because there's cost to every reforms, and priority is to safeguard elites. The priority is to provide protection to people in power. The priority is perpetuation. The priority is ad hoc gains. Even the budget announced recently, I just learned yesterday that non-filers have been given all the privileges, which I was being told that they would not be able to travel. So police reform was made. Dr. Salil is here, and he's actually the founder. I mean, he made that law. The moment it was made, only after 6 months it was compromised, and it was, we went to square one, and all because of the political gains we want to make. Thank you.
Would you like to add, sir?
I think with the reference of this plan, we have come a long way. and I have also handled National Action Plan. And we did quite well. In areas, I also feel that we did very well. Actually, National Action Plan, what was it? It was about the national vacuums. Historically, in all those areas where we had faltered or failed, we put those 20 points into National Action Plan. There were points which needed whole of the nation approach. There were points which needed change of attitude, approaches. There were points as deeper as Kashmir. There were points who were religiously very sensitive, but they were all put in. And that was a time when terrorism was really at its peak. So you really had to be sensible enough not to trigger fire anywhere and everywhere in the country. You have to be articulate. You have to know that kind of a statecraft. And there were areas where we could not perform well. Long-standing, complicated issues of refugees, this criminal act. But still, we have come a long way. Yes, those who are responsible, they should be delegated this responsibility. No way. Why have you otherwise appointed them? So people have to be made responsible and also accountable. And we have to pursue with full vigor the remaining points of National Action Plan. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Air Marshal Amir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sir, once we say in the briefs that we are winning against the terrorists, we are always, winning. I myself being a practitioner of counter-terrorism operation for 25 years, militarily we have always won against them, but they have always morphed again after every 2 or 3 years. We see the rise in terrorism and all these areas from South Waziristan, North Waziristan, Tira Valley, they are again emerging out of their holes. So one of the very famous counter-terrorist experts, Seth Jones, he writes that the most important thing is the population if you have to counter terrorism. And if the population see the legitimacy of the government and their forces as compared to those of the terrorists, then the terrorists will never succeed. And this is one thing, if I have to connect it with the rise in terrorism at this stage, do you see that the population has to do with, because the population is the one which gives the real-time intelligence, and the population is the one which gets recruited also by the terrorists. So how do the population see, and how much have we done to improve to address the expectations of the population? And secondly, sir, this narrative of us that we are the bulwark against terrorism, the global north always label us with coin-foin paradox of countering insurgency and fomenting insurgency. So do you think that we have to be more aggressive and proactive in our narrative also? And I would request General Janjua, my instructor and my mentor, to kindly highlight these points.
Yes, sir. We can take a round, sir, so that we all complete and finish.
I think this is quite a heavy question. Let me handle.
Chinese friend.
No, we can come to him.
Okay, okay, sir. इसके साथ what we just discussed, nobody can regale us on counter-terrorism approach more than General Janjua because of his expertise in hard preemption as well as soft preemption. So what Air Marshal Amir perhaps asked is the soft preemption as to how to avoid those conditions which lead to terrorism. So over to you, sir.
A lot can be said about winning against the terrorism. Of course, there have been difficult times. Actually, please look at your situation categorically and not generalize this. TTP is one entity which we defeated, dislodged, and which got relocated in Afghanistan. Now this is a very difficult situation. Even today, we do not have that kind of a strategy to deal with your enemy, to deal with your terrorist who has been housed in sovereignty of another country. This is a huge, huge challenge. And otherwise, the way we have excelled in defeating terrorism, particularly after Zarbias, if we were allowed to go to Afghanistan, we could have, done the job of the coalition forces also. I mean, in exuberance, I'm saying this, because they were out of our reach. Second dimension that you referred to is about the people. I absolutely agree. When the terrorists strike, they create a fear. And the general public first goes silent, quiet. And thereafter they wait and see which is the side to join. If the terrorist starts winning, if they have created good cause, people will tend to follow them. If the state immediately defeats terrorists, own people, hug them as their people, so they will join the state. So actually, people are put at the stake when such a situation arises. So obviously, if you want to win, you should always have people on your side. So now what is haunting us is our enemy, which has gone across. And it can come, infiltrate, and attack us. And in Balochistan, obviously, it is so important, strategically so important, globally so important, that there are fault lines which have been actually hijacked by the international players. So that problem is that much big. So don't take it as all the blame of not, winning over terrorism. The dimensions have also become very complicated and intricate because there are so many others who are, involved into it and add to your instability. So look at the whole canvas actually and see other dimensions also. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, sir. We come to the last question. Our Chinese friend and then the lady and the young man at the back. We'll take a round and we'll answer. So since this is the last question, we are getting late for our lunch. So Senior Colonel Chang, sir.
It's so lucky that I've got a question. My question is actually very simple. And my question is for Dr. Khalid Chauhan, because it seems from the government side. I think in South Asia, one of the reasons why the security situation is so serious, not only in Pakistan, but in the whole region, including India. And one of the reasons is that, as I see, there is no regional cooperation. Especially, there is no cooperation between Pakistan and India on the issue of counterterrorism. So, according to your strategy, do you have any strategy that in the future, as we wish that, we can bring India to the table to discuss counter-terrorism cooperation? Is there any possibility in the future? So that is what we wish to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That gentleman and lady, and then we'll answer all these questions. Yes, आप भी. जरा mic जल्दी से दे दें.
Sir, my name is Usman and I am from University of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Muzaffarabad. Sir, मेरा सवाल ये है कि हम देख रहे हैं गुज़िश्ता कुछ अर्से से कि इंडिया ने इलीगल एनेक्सेशन, इलीगल ऑक्यूपेशन और इलीगल डेमोग्राफिक चेंजेस किए हैं और इतनी इलीगल चीज़ें करने के बाद वो हम पे अलेज करता है विदाउट एनी एविडेंस टेररिज्म का एक ब्लेम, जिसको सर हमने कलभूषण के थ्रू भी दुनिया के सामने एक्सपोज किया और इंडिया कनाडा के अंदर भी दुनिया के सामने एक बदतर तरीके से एक्सपोज हो चुका है. तो सर एज ए यूथ को अब इस नैरेटिव को, जो हमारा एक नेशनल नैरेटिव है, एज अ कश्मीरी हमें इस पाकिस्तानी नैरेटिव को दुनिया को कैसे प्रमोट करना चाहिए और कैसे बताना चाहिए कि इंडिया इज अ टेररिस्ट नेशन? थैंक यू.
The young lady.
Thank you. This is Dr. Gulasha Bhatti from NERST. My question to General Janjua specifically is, the previous question was related to the population of a country and how they are involved in any kind of terrorism. For me, I believe that in our power dynamics, population is one of the strong dynamics of power. So for Pakistan, I want your comment on it. I believe that it's about how underdeveloped, how uneducated, and how under-well-fed they are. So it's not about the population, it's about how, in which circumstances the population of Pakistan is. They are going to get very lucrative offers from other agencies to work against their own state. So do you think that this is the major factor as well, that we are not providing them benefits, not good opportunities, not the education? That's the real reason. That's not that we are well populated.
Yeah.
It's one of the power factor.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Dr. Johan, first answer to Colonel Chang. Would India cooperate?
Well, it's a very important question, and just a disclaimer that, obviously the mandate is that of the Foreign Office. But I'll generally address to this question because it's very important. You see, the regional cooperation is very important to achieve regional peace and security. But we need to see and dig down and see what is happening in the region. My own analysis is that since early 2000, and 2001 probably was a time when in Gujarat, the earthquake took place. And there has been a rise of Modi. And Modi actually thrived on that, natural disaster. There's a huge literature, academic literature, which points to the fact that, the calamities, conflicts, as well as a natural disaster, they create a room which can be exploited for good or for bad. Unfortunately, in the case of India, the rise of RSS ideology is directly attributable to that, incident and that natural calamity. And thereon, what they did was actually they took down the pacifists, the likes of Gandhi and others, and the hawks were actually the statues. They were placed on different places, starting from Gujarat and elsewhere. And since 2004-05, there has been a tendency within India to shine at the global state, even though they had that policy of neighborhood first. But that has played, regressively for the region. Look at Bangladesh, look at Nepal, look at other countries. It's not, it's like, hurting the neighborhood first. So such a policy actually does not work. The collaboration and the cooperation, Pakistan in the past has learned a lot from being part of the frontline state and, dealing with the conflict. We had been facing the spillover of the conflict from Afghanistan, largely from Afghanistan, and the kind of global game which was played into the region. But again, it takes two to tango. It doesn't take one to actually will and wish. So unless they realize that they have to gain, but believe me, that the idea of the West, which has been, I believe, greatly shattered in this 4 or 5 days of war between India and Pakistan, was that, the projection was that the India is somehow a counterweight in the region. That has totally been demolished. A, because they have divisive culture. They talk about the hierarchies and the power without actually being backed up with the data. They have the same sort of cultural practices which hurt. The inclusivity, they speak some 370 plus languages. There are issues of haves and have-nots. The population is, majority of them, somebody was saying, that now they are having two classes, A, the ultra-rich, and B, the poor, and there's no middle class in between. That, my own understanding is that, it will hurt them a lot before they actually realize that inclusive approaches and the sort of negotiation. And as one of the students said, that Kashmir is a big issue. So if they come out of the rats, they would not sign any statements. If they come out of other forums, they are increasingly isolating themselves regionally. They have already done so. And I am assuming that, they are their own worst enemies. I guess I've answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shah. So the last word by Janjan on the question of young lady about that people-centric approach and the young individual from AJK. He asked about Kashmir and how India is framing the narrative of terrorism against Pakistan.
Let me reiterate a few words for my Chinese friend, Excellency. This morning, when Mr. Bilawal opened up with his speech, so he clearly said that we would like to talk with India and find solutions to problems between us. Unfortunately, India has defeated the bilateralism since some time, and we are not on talking terms. And we have always urged that we need to sit together, resolve our disputes, and belong to the future by resolving our disputes. But it has not been possible. And with this recent incident, I find that it has rather become harder and difficult. But I do hope that a better sense will prevail. Why not? We are not shy of sitting on the table and looking squarely in the eyes and talking what is needed. Now coming to Kashmir, my sweetheart, actually after 9/11, India became the darling strategic partner, and its biggest gain was that it dubbed our freedom struggle of Kashmir as terrorist movement. And the world readily bought this because they wanted to have India on their side. So their narrative was selling. And it is the continuity of the same, that our narrative was dampened comparatively. Let's hope that post 10th May things will change and people will also hear Pakistan, because now we do have a weight in our voice and we have to conduct ourselves in a way that should be of a victorious nation. Ma'am, coming to you, I can't agree more. It is all about people. It is all about their well-being. This world, this country, this state, it is for the people. It is about the people. How can you ignore them? अगर हजरत इंसान आपका महवर नहीं है तो फिर कुछ भी नहीं है. अगर आप इंसान गैर महफूज है तो मुल्क कैसे महफूज है? So I agree with you. The biggest asset of a state is people, human resource. So the question earlier was that whosoever uses those people wins. So we as a state must keep our people in our closer hug. We may be poor, we may eat less, but then we must eat it equally. Nobody should be disregarded. Nobody should be disrespected. People are the actual asset and the essence for a state. I can't say more. I thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I thank all the distinguished panelists and worthy audience for a very patient listening. Your participation enriched our discourse. So over to you, Ikra, for your closing.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you to our honorable speakers and moderator. I would now like to invite President Apri to present mementos to our worthy speakers and moderator. Lieutenant General Retired Nasir Khan Janjua. Dr. Khalid Chauhan. Dr. Anil Salman. Dr. Sayyid Kaleem Imam. And Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua. We will now have a lunch and prayer break and will resume at 2 p.m. with our second working session for the day. Thank you so much, everyone. I would also like to invite President Apri for a group photograph